Hello, everybody. Welcome to the VBAC Link podcast. This is Megan, your host, which is so weird to say that it's just me by myself. I don't know how long it's going to take to get used to that, but here I am, and I'm still so excited to be with you. We have an awesome episode today. We have our friend Brenda, and she has a lot of stories to tell you, and I'm so excited to kind of learn more about all of her birth journeys. She is the mom of 6 and has had a mixture between vaginal, unmedicated, medicated, home birth, VBAC, planned cesarean, all the things. So we are so excited to dive into her stories today. As usual, we always have a review of the week, and I am going to be reading that for you today. This is from a mama in Australia. I don't even know actually how to say her username. It's like a San Barbie. Sorry if I'm botching that, love. Her topic says, 2 angels sent from above. Says, hey ladies, I'm from Sydney, Australia, and I have been a silent fan for months now. Ever since having my C-section November 19th, I have been obsessed with achieving a vaginal birth. Luckily for me, I fell pregnant July 20th, and I am currently 33 weeks. Listening to your podcast has encouraged me to be strong-minded and educated me so much. It has taught me how to self-advocate and stand up for my body. Thank you guys. I am going for my VBAC in late March. You guys won't need to stalk me because I will write you guys either way. I love that because we stalk you guys. I hope to be on your show soon. Love, Wendy, Sydney, Australia. It's so funny because when we read reviews that are from the past, we love to go back into the VBAC League community on our Facebook group and see if they post and what the outcome was. So thank you so much, Wendy. We love you back, and we are so glad that you've been with us.
You are tuned into the VBAC Link podcast with Megan Heaton, who is a longtime doula and VBAC mom herself, here to help you get inspired for birth after having had a C-section. Along with this podcast, the VBAC Link offers blogs, resources, and a comprehensive VBAC course for both parents preparing for birth and doulas wanting to take their VBAC education to the next level. Be sure to follow Megan and her team on all social media platforms for even more. Although these podcast episodes are VBAC specific, it is encouraged for all expectant moms to listen and educate themselves on how to avoid a C-section from the get-go. The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is not meant to replace advice from any other qualified medical professional. Here is your host, Megan.
Okay, we are going to turn the time over to Brenda. And before we do, I want to just kind of like give you a little sneak peek of what we've got a little bit in the end. There's my son in the background. So, like I said in the beginning, she's had 6 kiddos. And something that we want to talk about at the end is gentle cesarean. This is something that I personally had as well with my second C-section, and it made all the world of difference in my experience. And then we also wanted to talk about D-MER. So if you haven't heard of D-MER, hang in, listen to this amazing story, and at the end, hang in there because we want to talk about D-MER a little bit more. Okay, cute Brenda, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, I will turn the time over to you.
Okay. So yeah, super excited to talk. I mean, who doesn't love talking about their children's births? And so I guess I'll just kind of run through. Like you said, I have 6 kids, and each birth has been totally different. My first was, I was over the estimated due date and went in kind of in labor, but I was not progressing very quickly. And so it basically was induced because they gave me Pitocin. And so that went fairly
spontaneous, but induced.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And I was a first time mom, super tight. I'd been in like early labor for like 2 days. I was exhausted. And so 3 centimeters in, I was pretty much panicking with the pain. I got an epidural, which actually I think helped me relax. And I ended up having him, there was some complications with, he had aspirated meconium. So he did have to go, he had to leave for like, I don't remember how long, but it was fairly uneventful. So then my second birth, so there are 18 months between the two boys. I went in to be induced because I was worried about him being over and aspirating meconium. So I kind of was like, okay, from this experience, I'm going to do this with the next one. Still not really super informed really about anything. So I went in to be induced. Everything was going really well. And I think around 6 centimeters, his heart rate started crashing. And that happened multiple times. And so then they took me back and put me under general, which was really scary. It was really, really scary. I remember looking up at the nurse who was next to me. I just remember like looking at her, just like, can you please pray for me? I am so scared right now. And so, yeah, then I woke up. My first memory, I was holding this baby and we didn't know the gender. So I was like, oh, like, is this a boy or a girl? And it was just like, you're thankful for it and you're thankful for everything turning out okay. But after that experience, I was really disappointed with it. I was really disappointed that I had this experience. Like, it was kind of traumatic, and I had mild postpartum depression after I had my son Lincoln. And so after that, I was like, okay, there has to be something better than this. Like, I did not like that. And so I kind of started down the road of how can I have a better birth? And I completely nerded out on everything. And so I got pregnant with my third and was just, I'd read all the books, Ina May, I had watched all the movies, and I was just like, I really, really want to have a VBAC. So I got a doula, just started doing all the things I could do to prepare for that. And I went into labor, I think it was 5 days after my estimated due date, and tried to stay home as long as possible, went to the hospital, and I was already 8 centimeters. And I remember, I remember just like tears streaming down my face because I was like, I think it's going to happen. Like, I think it's going to happen. And like an hour and a half later, I had my third son, and it was seriously the best day of my life. It was my birthday. Yeah, the sun was shining through the window. It was like so cool and peaceful in the room. And the doctor came in and he just sat at the end of the bed, and I just had my baby, and he was perfect. And it was perfect. It was amazing. It was the best day of my life, or one of the best days of my life. And obviously like the satisfaction of having a natural childbirth, and just, okay, like I did it. It's empowering. It also, just the recovery, everything was so much easier. And yeah, I mean, it was awesome. So I was super thankful for that. And so then when I got pregnant with my fourth son, I really was like, you know what? Like that went so well. We lived right across the street from the hospital that I had all of my kids at. So I was like telling my husband at the time, maybe we should just have a home birth. And so I kind of started looking into that, and we kind of had some really difficult things going on at that time, and just really liked the idea of having more privacy in our home too. So I found a midwife, and I went into labor, like I think I was 9 days over. And it was kind of funny because she would kind of check on me, and I just was kind of like totally not communicating really. And she would be like, how are you doing? Because I had told her that I'd started having contractions, and she ended up showing up at my house and was like, we just felt like we needed to come check on you. And so I ended up being like 6 centimeters when she came. And so at that point, it was just really chill. Like, we just hung out. I was washing my dishes, making them coffee. It was very relaxing, and just, I don't know. It was like, I just don't even feel like I'm in labor because this is so I don't know. Yeah. And I wasn't really in a lot of pain, and it was just really awesome. And I really wanted to have him in my tub. So I did go in the tub for a little bit. And at that point, my contractions were getting quite a bit stronger, and I was pretty tired. There was a lot of emotional stuff going on in my life at that time, and I was just kind of checked out. And so my midwife kind of came in the bathroom, because at that point she wasn't really, she kind of just stood back and let me do my thing. And so she checked me, and I was like, 9.5 with that lip. And she was like, all right, well, you have a little bit of a lip left. So just you can try to push a little bit, but if it doesn't take care of it, then you need to stop and just kind of wait it out. So I tried doing that for a while, and I just got to the point where I was like, I'm done. Like, what other option do we have? And so I ended up getting out and going to my bedroom, and she manually stretched my cervix while I was pushing, which was extremely painful. And that it was probably like the most difficult thing I had experienced with childbirth, and very different from my VBAC in the hospital. So it was obviously like a really great experience, and it ended up being fine. The delivery was fairly, I guess, easy, and like I've never had any tearing with any of my births, and like 2 of my kids were over 9 pounds, and so my recovery and just the pushing has been really pretty easy for me, which I'm thankful for. So overall, besides the cervix stretching, it was like a really good experience. So then fast forward 5 years. During that 5 years, I had gotten divorced and remarried. So I had 4 boys, and I then was pregnant with my first child with my husband, Ruby, which was so super excited to have a girl after 4 boys. And I was planning to VBAC. I mean, I just assumed like that's what would happen. My provider was really supportive. I did have a little bit of because I knew that I had scarring on my cervix because it had torn when I had my son with HBAC. And so I was feeling a little bit like, is that going to create issues with the delivery? Because I kind of was reading into that and trying to learn all the things about breaking down the scar tissue. But I figured, well, I'll just try, and whatever happens, happens. So I think I was about 4 days after I'd been having contractions for a few days, and I remember it being in the kitchen a couple days before I had her, that I like had to stop doing what I was doing because my abdomen, I'd had a contraction and it just was really painful, which was really bizarre to me because it kind of came out of nowhere. And I just kind of kept going, and they went away. And for the next couple of days, I kind of just was like really low energy. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm having a baby. This is common. Like, you can get flu-like symptoms and clean out and all this stuff. And so 4 days after my estimated due date, I kind of just didn't feel good. I felt like flu-like symptoms, but again, I thought, well, I am having a baby. And my husband and my parents were over, and they're kind of telling me, like, you don't look very well. Do you not feel good? I'm like, well, no, but I'm super tired. I'm not sleeping. I forgot to mention that I also was very sick with the majority of my pregnancies. So horrible digestion, throwing up all the time, just coming out of both ends all the time. So I was probably not well, like, wasn't in the healthiest spot, but I was like, yeah, I'm really tired and I don't feel good, but like, whatever. So I laid down, and the only time I've ever taken a nap in all of my pregnancies was this time. I fell asleep on my bed for like an hour and a half, which was so crazy. Well, then I woke up, and my husband was like, I really think that we should take your temperature because you are acting kind of funny, which is another thing. I hallucinate when I have a fever and get super weird. And so I was like, okay, whatever. So he took my temperature, and I was running a fever, and I was like, well, I'm fine. Like, I'm just really tired. And he was like, no, I really think we should go to the hospital. And at that point, my sisters were kind of involved. They don't live in the area, but they were kind of involved, and they were all like side texting, like, Brenda needs to go to the hospital. Brenda needs to go to the hospital. This is making us nervous. And I definitely was like declining rapidly. I did not feel well at all. I couldn't really walk. My abdomen just hurt really, really bad.
That's so scary.
It was really weird, but I still was like, whatever, like, I just am really tired. And so they finally convinced me to go to the hospital. So I'm like, fine, I'll just go there and get some medicine. And then I need to get better so I can have a baby. So it's 30 minutes from our house to the hospital. And from the time we left to the time we got to the hospital, I was a complete mess. I couldn't, anytime my husband would go over any bump or anything, I just was like in so much pain. My abdomen was just, it hurt so bad. And I can't even really describe the feeling, but it was so painful. And I remember getting there and I was so mad at him because I was thinking, like, why are you going over these potholes? This is so painful. And I'm thinking, like, I've had 4 children. Like, what is going on? Like, this is really weird. I should be able to handle this, and I'm not handling this. So we get into the emergency room, and by this, I'm shivering. It's summer in Minnesota, so it was probably 90 degrees, humid. I was in black leggings and a sweatshirt, and I was freezing. So we get in there, and the ER lady was like, "Are you here for labor and delivery?" And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm here. I need to see a doctor because I need some medicine." And I was super belligerent. And I'm not that way. I'm a very passive, quiet person, but I was basically almost yelling at anyone I came into contact with, which I don't remember really any of this. And they wanted to put me in a wheelchair, and I refused. I wanted to walk up the stairs. I was just being really very weird and just totally out of character. And so we got up to labor and delivery, and they said, "Yeah, you're running a fever, and we're going to give you some fluids, and we'll admit you because eventually you'll have your baby, but we know you want a VBAC, so we'll just take it slow." And then over the course of, I think it was like maybe 20 minutes, they, were trying to put an IV in, which was not working, I guess. And another thing I don't really remember, and just kind of like to show, like, it made me realize like how out of it I was, because I guess they had multiple people come in and try to put my IV in, and there was blood everywhere, and I don't remember any of it. And so they came in and they're like, "We're going to do an internal or rectal just to get like a more accurate read." And it was like, my internal temp was like pushing 107. And then I was,
my gosh.
Yeah, I was exhibiting other signs of sepsis. And so the doctor came in and he was like, I was going into septic shock. And so they brought me back and did a C-section. And yeah, it was a really crazy thing. And she ended up they did kind of, I don't remember this either, but they told my husband, like, we don't really know what the outcome could be because this is really serious. Yeah. And so it was scary for him, but he did great. Like, he was awesome. And I was completely out of it and saying really weird things because of all the medication I was given. And he was just really great, and everything turned out fine. Like, she was healthy. And as soon as I was cleaned out, my uterus was completely full of like green fluid. So yeah, which made sense. Then obviously the pain, it was completely infected. Everything was just infected. And so they actually washed me out, which was really weird. But as soon as I got back to the room, I mean, within probably several hours, I was completely back. As far as like temperature wise, my color had returned. When the doctor came in, he was like, "I don't even recognize you from the person that came in." So it just was really crazy how quickly things can change. And then 2, just how little control we have in those circumstances. Like I had no control over anything, and it was completely different than my previous experiences. So I was not expecting to have a C-section because I was septic.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'd never even heard of that before. And so I felt like my recovery with that was pretty, it was fine. Like I don't think anyone enjoys recovering from a C-section, but I have a really great support system, and my husband is really helpful and hands-on. And so I felt like it went well, and I felt like the postpartum period was good. It was, I don't know, it just seemed like she entered our family, and it was awesome. Like it was super awesome. And I didn't feel like I was impacted much by her birth as far as like being traumatized or anything. So that was great. So then I got pregnant again, and there's about 2 years in between Ruby and her younger sister Bridget. And so I always thought, like, I hadn't heard too much about a VBAC after 2 cesareans, but it was definitely something I was interested in. And as I kind of started looking around and trying to find a provider that would support that, it was pretty much like hitting dead ends everywhere. My provider, and it was during COVID. And so there's a birth center in Minneapolis that they would normally do it, but because of COVID, they weren't able to do any VBACs. They would only do, if you were a VBAC, you would have to go to the hospital that they worked with. And just COVID had put like a ton of restrictions on that. And so that was out. And so I ended up finding a provider, which it was like an hour and a half away. And she was amazing. Like she was so reassuring and so positive that this was something I could do. And so from probably 4 months to 8 months, I was seeing her and making the drive, and I would go to the appointments and feel really positive about it. Like I felt really positive. I felt like, yes, I can do this. This is amazing. I'm going to have my plan was to have the VBAC I could do a water birth at their center, and I could, basically deliver my own baby. And I was thinking, I'm going to have a VBAC after 2 cesareans, and it's going to be amazing. And this is going to be like the grand finale of all of my birthing experiences. And I thought, like, well, why not? Because I have had VBACs. I know I can do it. And then I would leave and kind of just start feeling uneasy again, which I know can happen. And I've heard other stories, like listening to other birth stories, like, yeah, like you kind of doubt, and then you go back and you feel like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. So I basically was on that roller coaster my whole pregnancy and wasn't really seeing her as very much because of COVID, like minimal visits or whatever. And so I think it was like 35 weeks, 36 weeks. I went to an appointment. It was fine. I left, and I just had this like horrible, uneasy feeling in my chest. And I looked at my husband. I'm like, I shouldn't do this. And he was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, this is not the right choice for this baby. And he was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is what you want. This, like, we're doing this. You can do it. Like, and I just was like, no, this is not the right choice. And we need to change our plan. And I just started crying, and he was like trying to be helpful. Like, okay, is this hormones? Is this like, we need to go have another pep talk with our midwife? Like, what's going on? How can I help you? But it was just like this feeling like, like that just mom instinct, like this is not, I need to do something different. And so I called my OBGYN that I had with Ruby, and I just asked if I could come in. So I went in and I just told her everything I was feeling. And she was so amazing and so supportive, and just trying to even still give me options on having a VBAC after 2 cesareans. Like, she couldn't do it, but she could try to find other options. But at that point, I just felt so strongly that I needed to have a scheduled cesarean. that I just was like, you know what? No, like I appreciate you and advocating for me, but this is what I want to do. I know this is the right choice, which was very weird to like get to the place of accepting that. But I felt like total peace about it. And so I ended up she actually started talking to me about the gentle cesarean and basically said, like, these are the things that I can do. So that was really cool to be able to have a say in that. And she was awesome. She pulled Bridget out very gently to like help mimic coming out of the birth canal and to try to squeeze the fluids out. She delayed the clamping as long as she could. They put Bridget to my chest right away. And so overall, it was a complete different experience than what I'd had with my other C-sections, obviously. And it still was like, obviously, I would have wanted to have a VBAC, but it just was very peaceful. I felt respected and I just felt like I felt very peaceful knowing that it was like the right choice for that. And so, yeah, that was kind of the all my births. And so I guess the next thing would be like the postpartum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to just say, like, way to go of following that intuition. We talk about it all the time here on this podcast. And it's something that's so hard to sometimes understand and decipher, whether it's just fear or if it's truly intuition. And your husband's like, wait, no, like, that's not what you want. And you're like, no, it's not necessarily what I want. It's what I feel is right. And it's so hard. And I think it was Julie or something that told me a long time ago. And I swear by this because I've kind of tuned in, and it's something that's this weird thing, like this intuition will not place fear. I don't know how to explain it. It's like intuition will not be fearful. It's just factual, right? Like this is what I should do. It's not because it's fear. You have fear.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of hard to like decipher through that, but yeah. So let's talk about the postpartum. Let's talk about more of your postpartum journey.
Yeah. So after I had Bridget, I definitely struggled more and basically went through this period of spiraling into this, what I now understand as postpartum psychosis, which was really scary because I had no idea what was going on, but I essentially became unsafe. I couldn't drive because I would want to run into traffic, or I couldn't be left alone with my kids. I couldn't shower. I was completely debilitated, and it was really, really scary. And so I had that happen. Thankfully, I have a really amazing support system that kind of rallied around me. And I was able to get help, counseling, medication, and then just family support fairly quickly, which helped kind of get out of that initial psychosis. But then shortly after that, my dad passed away from COVID, which he had actually come out to help me. Him and my mom had come out to help me with my postpartum. And then he got COVID and died. And so that was really, really hard and kind of threw a wrench in everything, because then it was like, okay, well, now I'm grieving, but I'm also really not stable. And so that's kind of been my journey for the last year, is kind of like trying to come out of that. And it was a combination of help, asking for help, counseling, changing medication, which is another thing. I am not someone that I've never been on medication. I don't take stuff. I'm pretty natural minded. So that was a really humbling experience. Like, I need help. And why doesn't anyone talk about this? Like, what is going on with me? So I feel now I'm coming out of the fog, but it's been a really, really long journey. And that kind of like can be connected with like the D-MER, which people don't know, it's Dysphoric Milk Ejection Reflex. So I've had it with all of my kids, starting with my first, and my family doctor was the one that first introduced me to D-MER, because I told them about these feelings I was having, and he had told me that, yeah, it's this condition not talked about, but it's basically the dopamine is inaccurate. Whatever is being released, there's like a glitch or whatever. So D-MER it can vary for women, but in my case, it was 15 seconds before my milk lets down. I have this horrible feeling where I just want to die. It's just this all encompassing feeling. It lasts for probably a minute and then goes away. Every single time I've nursed every single one of my babies, that's happened. And it's just a crazy thing. And the only thing that I've found to help is once I knew what it was, I can that helped knowing what it was, that it's a physiological thing. It's not, there's nothing actually really wrong with me. But yeah, my experience with it, I would say, was pretty extreme. And I think just realizing that our bodies are they're so amazing and they serve us so well, but there are differences for everybody. And my body clearly has some hormonal glitches maybe, where just with the C-section and the D-MER and all these different hormonal chemical things, it kind of was like a perfect storm for the psychosis. I've come to kind of that conclusion. But yeah, the D-MER is really interesting to me, and just because it can also vary with women. I mean, everybody has some, it goes away, some it's only with a couple of the kids, and mine has just been a consistent thing with each of my kids. So
yeah, and it, like you said, it's something that not a lot of people talk about, but we have a lot of people that will talk about, like a lot of clients, right? So I've been a doula for a while, and it's like, I don't like breastfeeding, it physically makes me anxious. They explain these feelings, and it's just not really talked about. And I don't even feel like a lot of these doctors are saying hey, this is a thing either. So when I saw that, I just was like, oh, I want to talk about that a little bit. I want her to talk about that because it's unique and it's something that it does happen. So what would you say was one of the things that would really have helped you through all of that? How long did you nurse for your babies?
I self-led weaned all of my kids. And so it ranged from 2 to 2.5 maybe. And so my daughter is almost 2 and we're still weaning.
Yeah. So do you still have those feelings, or does it kind of as baby gets bigger and you do it more, does that kind of fade away? So it's definitely more extreme in the beginning when you're producing so much more milk. Now that as they got older, it would be less, but I still have the feeling oh, I feel like crap. Okay, my milk's going to come in. And then it does. It's so weird. And that was kind of one of my coping mechanisms, is I would think of it as okay, I can look at this as a positive thing. I can look at it as, this is warning me that my milk is going to come in, especially the first few months when you're just constantly leaking. So I'd be like, okay, where's my baby? I gotta nurse before I leak all over. And I kind of tried to make this game out of it, because there's literally nothing I can do about it. So unless you want to stop nursing, but yeah. So wild. I also want to just talk about really quickly before we end, family-centered cesarean. With my second, I wasn't necessarily wanting another cesarean. I really wanted to VBAC, but that's just not how the story went. And something that I loved so much was my husband remembered me saying, if I want to have another C-section, I really want to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And so my provider did very similar things, really made me want to be a part of it, and not even to the extent that yours did. And I think it's just important for you to know, listeners, that it is okay for you to ask for a different non-traditional experience in an OR. It's okay to say, hey, do you have a clear drape for a delivery? Mm-hmm. Is it okay if I pull my own baby out? Some moms scrub their hands, sterilize their hands. Is it okay? Let's play music. I want music by my head. Bring a speaker. I watched it in a mirror, and not everybody wants to watch their C-section. I'm kind of weirdly one of those people that are, I'm weird. And I really enjoyed watching it. I felt like I was more a part of my birth watching it, letting an extra birthing person or doula or photographer be present, delayed cord clamping, or at least milking the cord, as long as you possibly can, keeping the vernix on the baby, not trying to wipe them off. I mean, there's so many things. There's vaginal seating, breastfeeding in the OR. So I'm going to put this in the show notes. It's our blog about family-centered cesarean. And so that will be in the show notes. So if you want to know more about options for family-centered cesareans, check out the show notes and give it a link or a click, because there are a lot of options. And even if C-section is desired and it's like, hey, I want this planned C-section, that's okay too. But there are definitely more ways to make your C-section even more special and gentle. And so definitely check it out. Thank you so much for sharing all of your beautiful stories. I think they're amazing. I think they're each unique. And I love that through all of them, you were sick. It was more your family like, oh, you're not normal right now. But, you're following your intuition, you're following your gut and realizing, okay, something's different. I need something different. So I just want to say congratulations to all of your births. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Would you like to be a guest on the podcast? Tell us about your experience at thevbaclink.com/share. For more information on all things VBAC, including online and in-person VBAC classes, the VBAC blog, and Julie and Megan's bios, head over to thevbaclink.com. Congratulations on starting your journey of learning and discovery with the VBAC Link.